The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
The following program is closed captioned for the thinking impaired.
By tomorrow, I will rule the world!
You think he's gone? He's not gone. That's the whole point. He's never gone.
Is this some radical new therapy?
You see?
Well, I must have not been paying attention when you were just talking to me. Do you think that you could repeat the question? And I listened more attentively. There must have been something in all of that nothing that wasn't quite so easy to see.
All right, I think I got it.
I got it.
And I must have missed something when you were just talking to me. I must have not been paying attention.
Oh, see, it's okay.
Oh, now you're just doing it whenever.
Practicing.
Guess the things that pass for affection ain't the same as they were before. There must have been something in
All right.
that nothing that dropped me like a stone to the floor. And I must have missed something when you were just
I don't even have any notes. Isn't that awful?
You don't need him.
on mine just a little.
It's driving me out of my mind.
Oh, could you spare me the riddle and hand me a bottle or something that's hollow I can climb inside? It's a lifetime movie of the week starring you and I.
Almost.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
almost there. It's getting better. It's almost daytime, right?
He's been practicing, folks. It's like 9 a.m. for him today,
Right.
so.
Mine just a little. It's
Driving me out of my mind.
oh, could you spare me the riddle and hand me a bottle? Something that's hollow I can climb inside. It's a lifetime movie of the week starring you and I must have not been paying attention.
Second try. Hey, you did it. I'm so proud of you.
Took 7 tries.
Yeah, that's fine.
Look at Murphy. He's so cute.
He's impressed.
We gotta get him to come up here and just lay on the table someday.
He will.
He's so cute. All right, I guess we'll get this show on the road, shall we?
I guess let's do this.
Hi, how you guys doing? My name's Tom Duggan here at the Paying Attention Podcast. Hi, top 2 guys smoke shop at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. Whole bunch of stuff to get to today. I've got Kevin Druin is here. We're going to talk a lot about Lawrence. And I had a couple things I wanted to start with, and I just can't remember. Oh, we have Jeff Deal is going to be booked in, I think, in 2 weeks. Actually, we have Leah Cole, his running mate, is going to be in, I think, in 2 weeks. And then I believe the following week we're going to have Jeff Deal in the studio. And we've had Chris Doty, who's running for governor of Massachusetts for the Republican nomination. And he's running against Jeff Deal, our buddy. And now they're both our buddies because we've been friends with Jeff for 5 years, and Jeff has come to our bash every year. Even when he wasn't running for anything, he would come to the bash. And to me, as I said last week with Matt, that's friends for life if you come to my bash.
Yeah.
This year he came to the bash, and the guy running against him, he's from, I think, Rentham, came all the way up from Rentham, if I have that right, to our bash, and he stayed the entire night. We actually let him get up to the microphone and say a few words because he was in the room, and he's been on the show. So he's been on the show, and we've been trying to get Jeff Deal on, and I asked Peggy, who works at the Jeff Deal campaign, if we could get Chris and Jeff to do a debate on my show. Now, how great would that be to have a debate for governor on the podcast, right? And her answer was, you're going to have to talk to Jeff about that because he only wants to do 2. He wants to do Cooner, and he wants to do Howie Carr. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm way better than Cooner and Howie Carr. Like, both of those guys are good guys, and I enjoy their shows when I'm in the car and I can listen to them. But I'm going to ask like real questions. Like they're going to ask like political. I'm going to ask real questions about what divides these two candidates, and really kind of need it because they're both now friends of mine, so I can get away with that. So I'm hoping that when Jeff does come, we can convince him to make us the third debate in the governor's race, because I think that would be fantastic.
I'd love to see Chris here going at it with Jeff.
With Jeff, because
it would be dynamite.
And what's interesting is that the Jeff people, and I don't want to screw up having them come on the show by saying anything bad, but the Jeff Deal people, they're very like they don't like Chris Doty. Oh. Like I was at the. Here's something we can talk about real quick. I was at the Dominican Father's Day parade in Lawrence on Father's Day. And now Lawrence is 90% Democrat. Like seriously, anybody who's been a Republican who has ever run in Lawrence, with one exception, with the exception of Charlie Baker, every single Republican that runs in Lawrence loses either 9-1 or 7-1, and it always fluctuates in between, but it's never less. I remember when Jameson Thomasak ran against Barry Feingold, and he was in Lawrence all the time, and I remember going over to him and saying, every minute you spend in Lawrence, you're losing votes. They're not going to vote for you in Lawrence. They just don't vote for Republicans. Dominicans don't vote for Republicans. They just don't. And he didn't listen, and he did it anyway, and he got clobbered in Lawrence, and Lawrence made the difference in that election because it was Lawrence, Dracut, Tewksbury, and Andover. Alex Visboli, my good friend, ran a couple of years later, and he had the same person running his campaign, and he was in Lawrence every day. And I said, listen, you're my friend, and I love you, but I'm telling you this out of love. Get the fuck out of Lawrence. Spend your time in Dracut, spend your time in Tewksbury, and knock on doors of people who will actually vote for you. Because in Lawrence, you're going to get the same vote whether you're here every day or whether you completely ignore the city. You're going to get the same number of votes. And I turned out to be right. He lost 7-1. But then I was at the Father's Day event, and it was all Republicans this year. Republicans are really starting to make an inroad in the Latino community, among Latinos in America. We just saw a Latino Republican win in Texas in a district for Congress, in a district that has not been has not gone Republican since something like 1890 something. Wow! And I remember they made a big thing about it on Fox. They made a big thing about it on CNN. Now, there's another district in Virginia that was just won by a Latino Republican in a district that I think in 50 years hasn't gone Republican. So we're starting now, finally, we're starting to see that Latinos all across the country, but specifically in Lawrence, are now starting to gravitate a little bit. So I ran into Chris Doty. He had 30 people with him. I ran into Leah Cole, who's the lieutenant governor running mate for Jeff Deal, and they had a bunch of people with them. I saw a guy named Dean Trand. I didn't even know he was running for Congress. He's running for Congress as a Republican. I thought he was a Democrat. I went over, I introduced myself, and I said, hey, Republican or Democrat? They said, Republican. I said, Republican? And then I turned around, and there's Jeff DeFore, who's running for state rep as a Republican in Andover. And they were very well received during that, because they were marching behind us. We were with Estella Reyes, who's a Democrat that I support for state rep. And they were behind us, and the reception that they were getting, it was pretty damn good, considering you're in the city of Lawrence. So, anyways, that's that. With me today, we don't have Jeff Deal. That's in a couple weeks.
No, yeah.
We have Kevin Drew. Now, Kevin's the frog man. He's a very interesting guy. He's an interesting guy because he's kind of like a jack of all trades. He does lots of stuff, and they're all very interesting. He has his own business where he has drug-sniffing canines. And he goes into places like rehab centers or into homes. You can hire him if you think your kids have drugs. And he'll come in and he'll have the dog go through their bedroom. And a couple $100 they can, that you can have. So if you think your kid might be on drugs, if you're running a group home and you think that maybe somebody there might have drugs, for a couple $100, Kevin will come in with his drug sniffing dog, and they'll let you know whether there's drugs in there or not. Mm-hmm. He's also a former teacher at Lawrence High School. We won't hold that against you.
Not Lawrence High. Arlington and South Lawrence East. I taught at those.
Okay.
Yeah, I taught middle school.
In the Lawrence schools.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
We won't hold that against you. Although we should talk a little bit about how the education system in Lawrence has changed.
Sure.
Right? And he's also an advocate for the homeless. He's an advocate for TMF. He's an advocate for Daybreak. By the way, hi, everybody at Daybreak, Megan and Karina and everybody at the Daybreak. They sponsored TMF's dinner last week. We want to thank them for that because they've got their own homeless to deal with, and they were nice enough to take some of the excess food, send it over to TMF, and sponsor the night. And I guess Megan did all the cooking. And as soon as first of all, she's cute as hell. right? So when I first met her, I was like, wow, she's really cute. Like, I was all
The
excited.
new director.
Right, the new director.
She's the new director.
And then when I found out that she cooked all the food, I'm like, wow, she's that good looking and she cooks? I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely in. That's 40 points right off the top, like before you even start.
People don't understand how much goes on behind the scenes, how much teamwork between nonprofits like TMF, the Psychological Centers Group, and how we work collectively. Many of the people don't know. You leave. We were looking for you last night. You guys were gone. I was promising not to say her name.
Okay, you can say
because I'll get killed.
Yeah, she'll kill you.
She'll shoot me dead. But I'm going to do it.
Right.
Nancy Gorman, you guys sneak away, and what a lot of people don't realize is you guys go to the homeless encampments.
Yeah.
You go out into the tents, underneath the bridges.
We
and so
off-road.
forth. Off-road, definitely off-road, and that's why your vehicle is the way it is.
Right. That's why I needed a Jeep.
But you guys go out and you guys provide food. And one of those nights, Chris Doughty joined us.
He did.
And one of the stops on the route is the Daybreak.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing everybody in Lawrence needs to understand is we have one homeless shelter, the Daybreak. It consists of 44 beds, mixed men and women. There's more men, I believe, male
Right.
beds than there are female beds. All 44 of those beds are full.
Every night.
Every night. When a bed opens up, it is full within 4 to 6 hours.
Yeah, there's a waiting list that's like a year long.
waiting
to get
list.
in there.
We stood outside. Remember, we stood outside, me, you, and Chris Doughty, after Chris had gone, taking a little tour of the place. And we looked back at the building, and I said to you guys, if I told you there were 44 beds in that little ranch house with a bump out, that's what it is, essentially. It's a ranch home with a bump out that's been created. Would you believe there's 44 beds in that? And you and Chris looked at me and said, absolutely not.
No.
It's incredible what they do in there. And their staff and their teams. Donna Kilvin just got an award for leadership among women in Massachusetts for her work at the Pegasus House. And Donna actually even took over Women's View and was kind of supervising them both at once.
What is Women's View? Explain it to people.
Women's View and Pegasus House are two separate programs just for women. Okay, and once again, a testament to any program, just like the Daybreak is, how many beds do you have, and are they all full?
Right.
And the answer is yes and yes in both facilities. Women's View is full. Pegasus House is full. And they are for women only. Women who've been abused. Women are transitioning from drugs. Women who've had bad backgrounds and things of that nature. But
especially women with kids.
Yeah, you do a ton of activities. They have graduations for these ladies. I was fortunate enough. I was Santa Claus over there, and the work.
Oh, you'd be a great Santa Claus. I can imagine that.
I'm giving it away. I was the Santa. I was the man behind the falling beard at Pegasus House this winter, and what a great job they all do, and all three programs.
Right.
And good luck to Megan. She's really got her work cut out for her. With that program, because it's jam-packed and we need a bigger facility.
I just hope she stays, because in this business, if you want to call it that, in this industry, the homeless industry, there's a huge turnover because it's tough. It's a tough job, and you're not making a lot of money. And you're dealing with the toughest of the tough. You're dealing with people who are level 3 sex offenders. You're dealing with people with alcohol and drug problems.
Anger problems.
Anger and violence problems. We have one homeless person. I won't mention his name. He's somebody that we love to death. We helped him a lot. But I watched him one day go from 0 to 100 in under 5 seconds. A guy came by him and bumped into him, and I guess it was a guy that had stolen his jacket the night before, and he'd been looking for him. And he turned around and cold-cocked that guy and knocked him on his ass with one punch, and we never saw it coming. He was in mid-sentence when he did it. And I was like, wow, that guy's really volatile. Like, we had never seen that side of him. And we all had a meeting afterwards and had a big conversation among all of us. Like, now that we know this about him, we got to keep an eye on him, right? Because I always tell any of the homeless advocates that are doing this for the first time, go out and see American Sniper. And look at what happened to Chris Kyle at the very end of that movie. He was a veteran. He was a sniper. He came back. He was helping veterans with PTSD. He took this guy to the gun range because he liked to shoot. And the guy was mentally ill, and he turned his back for 5 seconds. The guy took the gun and shot him and killed him. And the guy was just making, like, he had this guy at his house. He had him eat dinner with his family. He'd really reached out and helped this guy a lot. And so I tell that story to anybody starting to help the homeless and getting into this, to always remember that the guy smiling at you could put a gun to your head in 5 seconds. That no matter what you think of any of the people that you're dealing with, they're all volatile because any one of them could have a mental illness that makes them violent on the snap of a finger. and you don't want to have your back turned to them. I used to tell our friend all the time, we would go to these encampments, and then the food would be in the trunk. So she'd open the trunk and lean in. Now she's got her back to all of these people who are surrounding her car. And I say, you need to have somebody come with you, to park behind you, to keep an eye on your back while you're doing these things. And that's actually why me and Bob go with her every Wednesday and sometimes on the weekend.
It's definitely a job that one person should not be doing alone.
No.
We had one individual. We had gone on into the encampment, and we accidentally put our headlights on the tent.
Oh, yeah.
We're still dealing with his anger. I'm still dealing with him
Trying
being
to
angry.
sleep.
Yes, he was very angry with us because the lights hit his tent.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, right behind Mr. Tux.
You know what I mean. And we had all sorts of goodies, but the lights on the tent was enough to set him off.
We found out afterwards that one of the reasons why he gets so mad is that even though he's homeless, he has a full-time job. And he gets up at 5 a.m. to go to work. And so we're pulling it like 12:30 at night, and we've got our headlights on, and it goes through his tent, and it wakes him up, and he gets all pissed off.
Yeah.
So now we've learned, turn our headlights off before we pull in, and then we leave the food outside his tent. When he gets up in the morning, he's got a good breakfast for him to start off the day.
It's amazing how the process starts. And Mike and I were talking about it last night at TMF. We had a huge crowd last night. And,
You sponsored the dinner last night.
It was a great dinner. Mike Agricola had to go to Mike for his wonderful gesture when he gave us the restaurant.
Right.
And Mayor DePena joined us, and I told him that night, I'm scheduled sometime in June. I didn't have the exact date at the time, and I said, I want to make sure I come to you for the food. And wasn't it delicious? He beautiful dinner last night by the team at Salvatore. So thank you, Mike, for helping out. But, like I said to Tom, Mike last night, and even the Lawrence City Council, we're much more than a plate of food.
Right.
The plate of food is what lures them in. And now we can get an understanding of, try to build a trust with them. And that's where it starts. And once we build a trust, we can go to the next level, which is getting them the resources that just can just get them through the night at times. We're talking hand sanitizers. This was one of the clean, I don't know, what do you call it? Clean needle Kits, yes. If you're an IV drug user, this is a thing that sanitizes everything. Last night, we gave out headlights for the homeless. They went in like 5 minutes. Mike opened up a box of headlamps, and those things went. They had comforters last night as well, and they always have clothing and things. But the idea is to give them the provisions that they need for the night, but after a while, find out what their issue is.
Right.
And for many of us, it's a drug use, it's mental illness, and for most, it's a combination of the two.
Right.
And, ultimately, it's to get them to...
But you got to talk to them, and that's the thing. Like
building a trust.
I see how people in Boston go into some of the homeless encampments in Boston. They sweep in with food and blankets, and then they leave. And the difference between what TMF does is they make it like a one-stop shop, where if we find someone on a Wednesday night who says, I'm ready to go to rehab, I'm ready, we can put them in a car right there, and we get them into Tewksbury Detox. We can pick them up the next morning and get them into Tewksbury Detox. Tewksbury saves us beds, thanks to Mike Gorman. So when I was trying to explain this to Dan Rivera, who threw us out of the bus station when he did that, he was like, well, if you're showing up and giving food, you're going to attract homeless people. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. That's not really what it is. The food is there as a lure to bring them in. Once we get them, you talk to them. You find out what their personal issues are, and then you try and find the resource that can help them with that. We had a couple of veterans show up at TMF on a couple of occasions. We have Sue Evans she was with Veterans Northeast. Now she's with another organization.
Love Susan.
And we also, I think, Randy Carter, who is from ClearPath, has come down, and we find a veteran that's on the streets. We can get them that night into a place to stay. The next day they go to Devon's to do a physical intake. Randy will help them get all their paperwork, and they'll be in an apartment within a week or a week and a half, depending on what they need physically, what they need for benefits. A lot of people on the streets don't realize that because you're homeless, there are special benefits from, we can debate whether that's good or not, but there are special benefits from the state and federal government if you're homeless.
Absolutely.
There are certain programs, but people don't know what those programs are. So you become homeless. You don't know where to go. Where do you go? You go to City Hall. They don't know, right? But you come to TMF, you have experts in the field of drug addiction. You have experts in the field of homelessness, especially veterans homelessness, and you talk to them. And you find out what their individual needs are and get them off the street. And I think Michael's last count was over 40 people since TMF started that he has gotten off the streets and into permanent housing. That's 40 less people breaking into cars, breaking into homes, using drugs in the streets, assaulting you for your pocketbook.
You had left last night to go do the run.
Right.
And I couldn't believe she didn't know you. Do you know Rachel from RJ Journey? She's been coming now for about 3 months.
I've met her just to say hi.
She's like, I'm going on the Valley Patriot podcast. And she's like, Valley Patriot? I'm like, that's the newspaper. And I think Danny Rice came over and he's like, Tom Duggan, you don't know who Tom is? He sits right over there. And she didn't know you.
Right.
And I'm like, I got to introduce you to Tom.
I'm not a friendly guy.
No. Rachel, this is her pamphlet. And I asked her, I said, you've been coming now how long? She's under 6 months. And I said, roughly, Rachel, how many people have you encountered here? She said, 18 I've taken. And tonight, this was last night, she showed me paperwork on 5.
Wow.
And Mike said, I sent her 2 tonight. So, she's working in the list of support that they can give, everything from if you're being transitioned out of jail, drug courts, probation, reentry, detox, inpatient, outpatient services, support groups. It's virtually any type of services you could need. And I know she's worked with a young girl that we both care about very much. She's done some work with our other friend.
Sam?
Yeah, she's done some work with her.
She's actually related to me, so we kind of keep an eye on her.
Yes, me too.
Like through a fourth removed type of stuff.
She's related to me a little bit closer than fourth removed.
All right.
But yeah, we share Sam very much. But it's amazing.
I actually
how many
finished my
people
coffee,
help.
by the way, Chrissy. First time ever. Go ahead.
Congratulations.
It's amazing the amount of people we're taking off the street, and that's what I told the city council. I'm like, we're not putting them on. We're trying to get them off the street
Right.
into detox or into
And
permanent.
I'm hoping that Mark LaPlante, who I love to death, he's such a great guy. He does so much for the community, but he really does seem to be kind of hostile toward the whole TMF thing. He voted against us at the city council meeting, and I kept trying to find a nice way to say, but if you came and you saw what was going on, don't just come once, come once or twice, and actually see how this works, it will change your mind. Because I'm a right-wing conservative. I'm way further to the right than Mark LaPlante. And I had the same idea in my head 5-6 years ago. And I think a lot of conservatives feel the same way. Fuck them all. Tell them to get a job. Tell them to stop using drugs and get back into society. They're causing their own problems. They're on the street because they burned their family. They've stolen from their family. They've gone through the whole drug thing. And that's where I was in my head until I encountered TMF. And I was driving around the city chasing police calls one night, and it was a slow night. And I came by the Buckley garage, and there's a bunch of people in there with like chairs and tables eating pizza. I'm like, what the hell is this? So we parked a half an hour away just to kind of watch to see what was going on because we knew this was not supposed to be happening. And we watched, and people were happy, and they were hugging each other, and all of a sudden I see somebody giving somebody a sweater, and somebody opened up the trunk of their car, and they were handing out brand new packages of socks. That it turned out to be Nancy, right? and I said, maybe this is something good. Like, let's go. So I actually got out of my car, which I normally don't do. Got out of my car, I went over, and I started talking to some of the people there, and I met Michael, and I met Nancy and Sam, and they started telling me what their vision was for this. This was the first night. It was to provide pizza, to bring food, to bring them in so we could learn what their problems are and help them. So I said, all right, I'm gonna give this a shot. Let's see if maybe these guys are actually like real, or if they're full of shit like most people who fly by night. They come in, they're here for a little while, and then they leave. Well, here we are 4 years later, and they've gotten well over 40 people off the streets. And again, that's 40 people not breaking into cars and causing problems in the community. And I just wish that people like Mark, who were in the same mindset that I used to be in, could break that and come and see for himself. Because I think if he did, I think his idea would change.
I think he's an outstanding city councilor.
He's a great city councilor.
I really do. I think he's great. To be honest with you, I'd like to learn more about what his concerns are.
Right.
I never found out what his objections were. I understand it's sort of an if you build it, they will come type of mentality. But
and he's not necessarily wrong because we talked to these individuals. Most of them are not from Lawrence. Like Ralph is from New York. And there's people from Virginia, and there's people from Boston, and some people from Lowell.
There's people from Andover.
Right, and the reason for that is because Andover has no services for the homeless. If you live in Andover, and I say it all the time, you got $1 million home, and you got a good job, and something happens, your wife takes you for everything, you lose your job, or you can't make your mortgage, and you end up homeless for whatever reason, you've paid millions of dollars in taxes over 20 years, and Andover has no services for you. You're screwed. You got to go to Lawrence. And so you have all these people from Methuen and Andover and Dracut and Salem coming into Lawrence who are homeless. And what's in Lawrence? What's the biggest product in Lawrence? Drugs. So even if you weren't on drugs when you started, usually when you're on the streets for at least a week, you're usually into the drugs at that point.
Yeah.
And selling drugs is really the only way to make money. So some of them are using and selling. And then they become a problem because Methuen didn't do what they were supposed to do, or Andover and North Andover didn't take care of their own people. And my biggest frustration is every community has a senior center. Every community should have a homeless center, even if it's on-call staff, right? Because North Andover, you probably don't have a lot of homeless people every day. But if it does happen, there should be somebody you can call that's on call that can bring you to a homeless center and find out what it is that you need from the government, what kind of services you might need. If you need detox, whatever it is you need, find out what that is, and then find the government program that can help them or the nonprofit program that can help them.
We've come in Lawrence. We've come so far, and we've made a ton of progress.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Lawrence is definitely on the upswing.
Oh, it has been for a while, too, and I definitely want to talk about that. But our homeless problem, I was talking last night with Lawrence's homeless coordinator, 60-plus families we have, not because of drugs, homeless, because of fires.
Fires, right.
We've got people displaced, 60-plus families displaced because of fires. We've got, as we just talked about, our facilities are packed to the max, and roughly we've got about 100-plus living on the streets.
Easily.
And then I was told we probably have another 200-plus what we call couch surfing.
Right.
Jumping around from house to house.
Yeah, they're not really homeless, but they don't have a place to live.
They're one step away.
Right.
One bad
argument
mistake.
with their friend.
Yeah, one argument away from the street.
Right.
But the security cameras. Let's start with one thing that's changed Lawrence dramatically. City 7 square miles, and you put 300-plus cameras up on the poles.
Yeah, I'm still not sure how I feel about that.
I got to tell you, Pavel Payano stood up when this was going on. I love Roy's response to it. Pavel says, reading about these cameras, they can read a text message on a telephone from a quarter of a mile away. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's how powerful these cameras are. Can zoom in. How are they going to be used? That's my concern. You're going to be looking at someone's teenage daughter. What are these things going to be used for?
They can also zoom into people's homes.
Exactly. And Roy said, listen, these cameras are nothing new. They've been used in New York. They've been used in L.A., Chicago, and other big cities. And we plan on following the exact same playbook that those cities are using. Since those cameras have been installed, crime has plummeted.
Yep.
Plummeted. Certain crimes.
Right.
Okay? They've solved everything.
The random violent crimes.
Murders.
Right.
They caught the kids dumping the girl's body into the Spigot River, wrapped in the couch there. They threw her in there. And the guy who dropped the girl off at the hospital that was overdosed, the teenage girl that he was molesting after drugging up, and they caught him dumping the powder down the drain and dropping her off at the hospital. They've solved countless crimes already. And it's great. It's causing people to reinvest in Lawrence. Then we had the gas explosions. The cameras were installed first. They had so many cameras, Tom, that at one point Lawrence police put out on Facebook the picture of it was the back of a box truck with 31 extra cameras in it.
Wow.
And they were asking you, a citizen, where would you like these placed?
Right.
We've got so many extras. Tell us where you want one, and we'll try to get it to you. I called up and had one put in an alleyway that I was concerned about. But it's just everywhere you go in Lawrence, if you commit a crime on the street,
they're going to get you.
They're going to get you, and they're going to get you relatively quick.
Right.
And they've already proven that. They don't sleep. They work 365 days a year. And as long as you got a cop that's paying attention to the monitors, these things are going to reduce crime in your city.
Right.
And Lawrence, I think, is at a 40-year low on crime.
Violent crime.
Restaurants.
And stolen cars, too.
You can't.
Lawrence was the stolen car capital of the world.
You can't steal it without being on tape.
Right.
You really can't.
Plus, there's no neighborhood you can go in Lawrence where the residents don't have cameras outside their homes. I pulled over, when they passed this new law, you can't text and drive. Now I text and drive all the time. So I was driving through, and I was up on Prospect Hill, and I pulled over, and I think I was on like Woodland Street. I pulled over, and I'm sending a text message because I had something really going on, and so it took me like 3 or 4 minutes to have this discussion. And I looked up, and there were 2 cruisers around my car. They're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm sending a text message." "Well, what are you doing in this neighborhood?" "I was driving through this neighborhood when the text came in, so I pulled over to answer it." "Oh, well, it's a high drug area." Well, all of Lawrence is a high drug area. What do you mean it's a high drug area? It's a high drug area, and we had 5 different calls from 5 different people in this neighborhood that there was a car sitting outside their house. So I get it, right? Because you have people who they'll give a random address in Lawrence. "You meet me in front of this house or in this neighborhood." They'll pull over. They'll exchange drugs for.
We're going to talk
for
about
money,
that in a minute.
and then they'll drive away. But I was just sending a text, but it wasn't 5 minutes before there was two cops surrounding 2 cruisers surrounding my car. All of these things are good, but there is a drawback, and I'm a civil libertarian, if nothing else. I'm a First Amendment guy.
Government watching you.
And I have a really hard time with how long they're going to keep these and for what nefarious purposes they can be used for. Now, I know Roy. Went to St. Pat's with him. He's a couple years behind me. He's a good guy. I think he's an honest guy, and I do think he's doing a good job as chief. However, he's not going to be there forever. And the people who work there at the police department, they're all good guys that we know of, but there might be a couple that might not be good guys who can abuse this kind of thing. And the chief has always said, well, we don't actually have somebody sitting there watching the cameras. Usually we'll get a report of a stolen car on Lawrence Street, and then it was 5 o'clock last night. They'll go back to that camera. They'll rewind the tape to 5 o'clock last night to see who it was. That I get. What I don't like is the government is storing all this information. How long are they going to keep it, and how long is it going to be available? And is it a public record, right? Are those tapes a public record? If I, as a citizen, say, I want to know what was happening on Boxford Street on Friday night. I heard there was a shooting. I want copies of that videotape to see if they got it on camera. They're not going to give it to you. They're going to fight with you to give you that, even though you have no expectation of privacy when you're in that neighborhood and there's a government camera sitting there watching you. It's still very difficult. So I have some serious reservations about the government putting up cameras everywhere and at the same time encrypting their police scanner so we can't see what our public servants are doing on our behalf. And I see these 2 things happening together, and it scares me. Because I read 1984. It was supposed to be a warning by George Orwell. There were some people using it as a manual. And it's giving the government way too much power. Way, way, way too much power.
It's certainly letting them take a look at what's going on everywhere at all times.
Right. And the good thing is it is reducing crime.
Some crimes.
I'm just wondering at what cost. Like, if 10 years from now that you have, like, literally zero privacy and the government is logging your movements everywhere you go, I think that's a problem.
Technology is being used as a good thing, and it can certainly be used as a bad thing. One crime that I don't think the cameras are helping with is drug dealing. Okay, and we kind of talked about...
moved it inside.
We talked about this, I think, at your office one day. Not very long ago. I'm talking about 2 years. 2 years ago, I want a finger of heroin. I do exactly what we were just talking about. You were just saying, I call you up. I tell you what I want. You tell me the price. We meet at a location. You bring the drugs. I bring the money. We exchange them hand to hand. Somebody sees us on their camera. Right. Somebody sees us and says, hey, this guy in a red SUV and another guy, they're exchanging drugs on my street. Can you give me his license plate number? Yeah, okay, I can give you his license plate number. And before you know it, the cops are waiting outside your house, monitoring your progress. They've got a lead on a drug deal.
Right.
Okay. 2 years later, I want that same finger of heroin from you, and you're the same drug dealer. We no longer meet up. I no longer bring green pieces of paper and hand them to you. I pick up my phone, I Venmo you the payment. You then take my finger of heroin, and you go to, the South Common, and we have a designated area. You place those drugs there. 5 minutes later, I come over walking my dog, I grab those drugs, and no one in the neighborhood has had the opportunity to call a cop on us.
Right.
And it's made these anonymous tip lines, you're not getting. I've talked to many law enforcement. The whole reason I got kind of involved with this type of thinking was a policeman said, how you been doing at work? I said, good. I said, what's strange is my last 3 finds have been on the exterior. I found heroin in a balloon in a bush. I found 2 vaping cartridges in a plastic container. I mean, they were sealed for somebody to pick up. It was a drop-off and delivery type thing. And I also had a treatment center say, we've had issues with drones dropping stuff into our yard. And
So it's made the criminals smarter.
it's made it easier. And it's made it more difficult on police to say, who the hell is dealing these drugs? It's much less out in the open. There's no more Kevin meets the drug dealer out on the street, we exchange, or that drug dealer's got 30 people coming to his house and a neighbor calls up and say, it's people coming and going from this house at all hours of the evening. This guy's a drug dealer.
Right.
You're getting a lot less of those tips, and that's exactly what the cop said to me. He said, we're noticing a lot more drop-offs and deliveries, and it's because of these cash exchange apps that allow you to no longer have to put cash in.
And a lot of those
hand.
are encrypted now, so the cops can't even get them.
The dark web is encrypted as well. Did you see Howie Carr? Did you read Howie Carr yesterday?
No.
He talked about this drug dealer Fats. He was like the largest North Shore drug dealer, pressing counterfeit pills in Lynn and neighboring towns in Lynn. And they finally caught him and his mother. I think he got 23 years yesterday for his crimes. But it's like, you can import this stuff on the dark web, buy a pill press, and have the stuff shipped to your house. I think you had something about somebody getting kilos of cocaine.
Yeah, in the mail.
You get it shipped to you to now on the dark web. And what's dangerous about that is the dark web, if I'm selling you cocaine or if I'm selling you fentanyl and you're in Lawrence, Massachusetts, and I'm in Beijing, China, it comes up as me and you are two foreign people. You're in Germany, and I'm in Italy doing these transactions. Right. But you're in Lawrence, and I'm in China.
Right.
Everything
you
is...
can mask everything.
The buyer and the seller are masked. Their addresses and the locations are masked. And the products they're even purchasing are masked. Right. It's unbelievable how convenient this technology has made drug dealing.
Right.
It really has. Not convenient to steal a car, to rob a purse off somebody. Once again, the government's watching.
Right.
But if you want to take a stroll in the park and drop drugs somewhere, I don't think anybody's going to pick you up doing it.
Right.
And to get it, your money shipped onto your phone in the bank, there's no more fighting with you. There's no more you trying to rob me of my drugs when I arrive. And it's, I got paid, I'm going to go deliver his drugs.
Right.
And we're never even going to see each other.
Right.
And it's made that real challenging for law enforcement.
Lawrence has gotten better in a lot of other areas, too. Community development has gotten better a lot. A lot of new businesses have moved to Lawrence.
Oh,
surprisingly, a lot of businesses.
Oh, my God.
And good for me, we're going to do a show next week on restaurants. What restaurants are good. We're going to do a restaurant review show. We actually taped it before the show, which is why I'm wearing the same shirt. I forgot what I was going to say now.
New restaurants in Lawrence?
Yeah.
I'll rattle off about 10 of them that are dynamite right now.
The one I want to try, I've had the food because they sponsored TMF one night, but Michelina's on Essex Street has phenomenal Dominican food. I was looking at these homeless people, and they were looking at me going, I can't believe how good this food is. We're eating better than most people who have homes tonight. and I asked, where did the food come from? And they said it came from Michelina's. Yeah. Come to find out, our good friend, Brian Thomas, who got an award at the Bash a few years ago, and a check, his wife owns that.
Really?
So, and I didn't
camera
realize
guy?
that. Yeah, the camera guy.
Okay, yeah.
So and I actually tried the food at Mama Juana's on Essex Street. Not bad.
Yep.
It wasn't as good as Michelina's, but it was good.
Have you tried Japu?
No, actually I did. I went with Thomas Michel, who was running for city council I think a couple of years ago. Brought me there, and I had the spicy seafood soup, and it was really good.
Oh, Japu's tremendous. Sazon Peru is tremendous. Another great restaurant. It's Al Caldor. If you haven't eaten over there, I think it's connected to one of the Lawrence City Councilors, has somebody that is a family member that owns that. But that's right, the Old Muniz.
Okay.
And the Old Muniz restaurant. The restaurant scene, Vaca on Essex Street, is tremendous.
There's a new taco place on South Union Street that I tried the other day.
Passion?
Yes, it was very good.
You got to hit the food. Honestly, I like the food truck that they have more than the restaurant that they have. Yeah, the food truck's dynamite. That's right on South Broadway at night.
Okay.
The restaurant.
I kind of have a rule about food trucks in general.
Oh, that food truck's phenomenal.
But I did try when we made that movie, Lawtown.
Yep.
And I had the camera crews riding around with me. One of the camera crew guys said, you really can't come to Lawrence and make a movie without stopping and eating off one of the food trucks. I'm like, go ahead, you go do that.
Yes,
I'll sit in the car. And he convinced me to come out and have one. And it actually was pretty good.
Yeah, some great, really, really great restaurants and food trucks. That'll be a good show.
Yep. The only problem with Lawrence is parking, right? I mean, most places it's a hard time getting parking. But there's a brewery that just opened on Island Street in Lawrence that
Spigot River.
Spigot River Brewery. A little pricey, but the food is really good.
I'll tell you,
and plenty of parking.
and you're talking to somebody who drinks like Budweiser, you know,
Right.
it's like 3% alcohol. You walk into Spigot River Brewery, some of those beers have 10, 11, 12% alcohol. They'll knock me down pretty good over there. It's a great brewery, Spigot River.
Yeah.
That whole area is booming.
Yep.
That whole Essex Arts Center.
The only thing that's not improving in Lawrence is the schools. The schools are worse than they were when the state took over. Kids are getting a far more inferior education now than they were 5 years ago, and they're certainly getting a far inferior education than white kids in Andover and white kids in North Andover are getting. And I blame the administration and I blame the state.
Yeah, I blame the administration as well. What went on at Lawrence High School this past school year, spare me the COVID. The kids were locked in, and they've got anger. It didn't happen at the Vogue.
Right.
It's the same kids from the same city.
It's not happening at Central.
It didn't
not
happen
happening
at the Vogue. It didn't happen at Central. The kids weren't lighting furniture on fire at the Vogue.
They weren't having sex in the hallways.
They were not having sex being taped in the hallway. There wasn't a full-blown barber shop in a bathroom at the Vogue. These types of adult lack of supervision. If a kid isn't in your class, you report them.
Right.
And if an assistant principal or a security guy doesn't go locate that kid, now it's on them.
Right.
But you have a job as a teacher that if someone is supposed to be in your class and they're not there, you just don't close the door and continue on with your lesson. You let somebody know we've got someone loose in this building that needs to be accounted for. And there are so many lapses in adult supervision at the. You don't really. I haven't seen too much problem at the middle schools. I didn't see any recordings from the Arlington or any recordings from any other middle schools. But what went on at Lawrence High this year was disgusting. Mm-hmm. It got to the point where Saj Purdy asked me to donate to the Bobby LeBlanc scholarship, which I did. He sold some squares, I think, for a Super Bowl, and I had bought. Mm-hmm. But I was at a point where I was getting angry. And I'm like, I don't even want to give money to a kid at Lawrence High at this point. That school is so mismanaged and out of control. Hopefully they get things together over there pretty quickly because it's an inferior education.
It is. And to me, it's racism. You want to talk about systemic racism? They talk about systemic racism in policing. The real systemic racism is in our education system because Lawrence gets far more money than Andover and North Andover per student, and they do a much more horrible job.
Terrible.
And you can't tell me that these kids aren't learning because they're Latinos and Latino kids are stupid. You just can't tell me that. But the excuses that we get from our leaders is even we had candidates here who say the same thing. Well, Tom, they come from homes that don't speak English and it's violence in their neighborhoods. And I'm like, yeah, but if you take that same kid and put him in Central, he does good. So don't tell me it's the neighborhood or the parents or the environment or the language or any of that. It's that your low expectations are so low that kids are only going to come up to the expectation that you have of them. And the other thing is no discipline. If a kid hits another kid or a kid hits a teacher, most of the time that kid's back in the classroom the next day. There's no real consequence for that kid. And that's on the administrators. That's not state funding. It's not federal rules. It's not the school committee. That's how you implement your job.
Yeah, and that's another big thing is, I talked, couple city councilors were upset. We can't get the superintendent to come answer questions in front of us. And I said to them, she really can give you guys the finger.
Right.
She doesn't have to listen to you. You're not her boss.
Right.
Jeffrey Riley's her boss, and she's appointed by him to run these schools.
She's not going to last long.
I hope she doesn't. I hope she's thrown out of here because the administration's a big part of the problem.
It is.
But at the same time, until we get rid of receivership in the school system, this lady can continue to give the city council, the school committee, and the parents the finger and say, I'm not coming and I don't have to answer to you.
Right. We got Kevin Drew in here. I appreciate you letting us go a little over. I didn't realize that time was up. You can roll up, Mel. Kevin Drew, and I appreciate you being here.
Great being here.
Anytime you want to come on, I'd love to have you.
I come on anytime
you want. Be like an off and on co-host or something. Great discussion, I thought. Next week, we're going to do a restaurant review. I eat out at least 3 or 4 nights a week, and we found a lot of places that we used to go to before COVID that really suck now, and we'll tell you what some of those are. And we've also found places that we never used to like that we've tried since COVID that are doing a phenomenal job, whether it's service or quality of food. So make sure you tune into that show next week. I want to thank our sponsors, McLennan Real Estate, Century 21 in Methuen. If you're going to buy or sell a house, this is the time to do it. Call McLennan Real Estate. AFC Urgent Care. We love Lisa Williams and everybody in AFC Urgent Care, Methuen and North Andover. Marsan & Son Construction. EIS Investigation and Gun Training. Borelli's Deli, where I'm getting my hot sausages, getting ready for 4th of July weekend. And if you haven't invited me to your barbecue, you should be doing that. Tomo and Shaken Seafood. Lazy River Products in Drake and a free shout out to Clear Path for Veterans New England and Sullivan Insurance. Sounds like Melvin Taylor says you got to go home. So go home already.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.